Here to help us navigate Washington right now is the Pulitzer Prize winning columnist George Will. Mr. Will, welcome. Good to have you with us.
Well, glad to be with you.
I remember an album, it was a rather radical album in the 1970s by a jazz artist named Gil Scott-Heron, and it was a song on it called "The Revolution Will Not Be Televised," and it was a screed against the times back then. And I thought last week, as I heard Mr. Mnuchin say, the trade war will not take place as scheduled. I don't know why that Gil Scott-Heron thought came into my head, but I can't follow it, George. All of this toing and froing on whether it's North Korea or whether we're going to be kind to ZTE or not kind or good with respect to trade in China or tough with them. I don't get it.
It's the art of the deal, Tyler.
Watch the use of the phrase national security. The president has said that importing cars from allies such as Italy, Germany, Japan, and South Korea, that is a threat to our national security. Once you invoke national security and you say that our national security depends on economic strength, therefore anything that affects economic strength can be regulated by the president under national security guidance, well, everything's on the table then. A few years ago, the French were doing what the French do, that is, they were endorsing free trade while carving out exceptions to it. They listed yogurt as essential to their national security. So governments love to do this, profess free trade and turn it into Swiss cheese.
Is there, in your view, a linkage between what's going on trade with China and what's going on with North Korea?
Well, the president enjoys freewheeling on the world stage, and it gets a lot of attention, and that seems to please him. The problem is it's hard to see with North Korea what's in it for North Korea. Back in the day when the Soviet Union had a ramshackle economy but a first world arsenal of ballistic missiles and nuclear weapons, the Soviet Union was described as upper volta with rockets. If North Korea were to denuclearize, it would be upper volta without rockets. Now, people say, well, what's in it for them is they'll get aid and they can raise the standard of living of their people. The North Korean regime has been a family project since the early 1950s, and never, not once, have they shown any interest in anything other than the security of the regime, and never any interest in increasing the standard of living of their people.
I don't believe you may know the history far better than I, there has ever been a nation that once it has acquired nuclear weapons has given them up.
That's almost right. Gaddafi did give them up. At least he may not have had them yet, but he was on the way to getting them.
He renounced it, yes.
Yeah, at which point we said, fine, we'll leave you alone, and then ere long NATO was leading the charge that had him murdered in a culvert in horrible circumstances. The fact is, if Saddam Hussein had had nuclear weapons, he would have survived. If Gaddafi had had nuclear weapons, he would have survived. I'm afraid U.S. policy has rather taught some unpleasant people the utility of nuclear weapons. Remember, if North Korea did not have nuclear weapons, no one would pay attention to it at all.
George, on the trade issue, what do you think this administration is seeking as a success? I mean, clearly President Trump wants to level the playing field for American companies who operate in places like China. He wants to cut the trade deficit. It's not realistic to suggest cutting hundreds of billions of dollars off the trade deficit, and nor, most economists tell us, is it even prudent policy. So what is he looking for?
Well, unfortunately, I mean, he has a case to be made against the Chinese and others regarding intellectual property and regarding the burdens they put on American businesses doing business in China. That said, the president seems to have one metric of national strength, and that is to not have trade deficits with other countries. Now, how you're going to run the world where every country has a trade surplus with every other country is an exercise in arithmetic I simply do not understand. I have a chronic and incurable trade deficit with my barber. Every 3 weeks I buy a haircut from him. He never buys anything from me, but somehow it works out. And what people who support a capitalist society and free exchange around the world, they understand that it works out that international trade globally is by definition always in balance. And the idea that you can have as an index of national health the absence of trade deficits, you want that, go back to the 1970s when our trade deficits shrank as the economy shrank.
All right, George, thank you very much. It's always great to see you. Appreciate your
Glad
insight.
to be with you.
Thank you, George Will.
Hey there, thanks for checking out CNBC on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all of the day's biggest stories. You can also click on any of the videos around me to watch the latest from CNBC. Thanks for watching.